There is a certain woman who needs this video today, and I'm speaking to her. This video is not for all women in marriages. This is for a woman who is experiencing an obscene amount of abuse, hurt, pain, stress, and potentially is even in a danger zone or in a danger space that puts herself and her life at risk and that of her family, particularly if you have young children. Now, I am boldly advising you to leave him. Yes. Shocker, Chanel has really dropped the bomb today. Yes, I am saying to leave him. Because if he's hurting you and is putting your life at risk, then perhaps the only option is to divorce. Now, before we get into the crux of the video today, I know what some of you are thinking. Chanel, you know, things can be worked upon. Absolutely. And that is actually something which I'm hoping and praying for a lot of you guys. But let me tell you the truth. The reality is that's not the case for all of us or for all marriages. In fact, I absolutely honor and love the institution of marriage when it's between two people who love each other, who have an understanding towards each other, who have a respect towards each other, who have a goal and objective to amicably agree and decide to building a life together till death do them part. But unfortunately, that is not the case for every marriage out there. And so this video is to support a woman who requires the processes of what it needs to end and dissolve your marriage. I'm going to be sharing with you some of the legal processes within the United Kingdom because that's where I reside and that's where obviously I petitioned to get in my divorce. I will share with that in a moment. But just to touch upon the very sensitive topics once again, I am not for divorce if your marriage is working out for you or because of a little hiccup here or a little disagreement. I'm for a divorce where it's going to save a life or it's going to give you some type of peace, okay? It's going to give you a safe space. It's going to give you the happiness that you so long in need and deserve. And also, this isn't a video for the woman who's like, you know what, it's not perfect, but I'm okay here. I understand what divorce can do where it comes to even your finances and, the division of assets and even dealing with, the children and the arrangements and co-parenting and all of the things that is honestly very scary in many cases. But weigh that out and balance it out with a woman who is in a danger space because she's perhaps fearful for her life. That was my story. I had to end my marriage because I was in a very unsafe space, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, every type of illy that I could possibly say. I wasn't in a safe space and I could feel it, and I was even being advised, Chanel, it's time you pull the plug and take action steps to saving yourself. And I'm so glad that I did 4 years on. If you haven't heard my story, I'll leave a playlist below because I did share a 5-part series of my marriage and ultimately what ended the marriage and saved myself because I was unfortunately in a very abusive relationship or marriage that resulted in physical abuse. I'm sure you would know or have heard, if you haven't, that marriage is not a bed of roses, okay? It is very challenging and it takes two people to mutually agree for the most part and respect one another for it to, be a safe space for both individuals. And I do believe that even if a marriage gets to a point where, oh my God, it's unbearable, I cannot anymore, that there is a requirement to do some type of mediation and marriage counseling, or, have some type of understanding at least with yourselves, or even separation. Separation alone can do so much to retrieving or reconciling a marriage union, okay? And in some cases that might not be the case, and this is why advice like this, or at least supporting videos like what I'm making today, is very much needed. And for the prayer woman out there, okay, for the religious folk out there, I know that a spiritual grounding is something that you perhaps will require. And you know, who knows, in your prayer closet, you can change the energy, you can change your man. But I'm sure you've heard of the saying, if a person shows you who they are, believe them. Because likelihood, even your prayers is not going to change the guy. If he's unfortunately a serial cheater, it's likelihood for him to switch that up and change and be all one for you may not be the case. And speaking of cheating, actually, I'm sure we all watched The Polygamist and how that ended, okay? Because it's not just, you know, physical abuse and stuff that people need to, or women need to save themselves from. It could even be sexual abuse, okay? Where, you know, it's even unconsensual and you're feeling pressured, or your man is literally putting your health or sexual health in danger by stepping out of the marital homes. There's 1,000,001 reasons as to why a divorce is needed. And just before I, you know, speak about the processes of divorce in the United Kingdom, I just want to end on this specifically. If you are in your premarital state, okay, so perhaps engaged, or you haven't even met Mr. Man just yet, this video as well, I feel that it would still be quite useful, because the realities are, there is a reality, okay? If you are somebody, as I said, who is a, you know, a spiritual person, a religious person, praying and hoping for change, I mean, it's possible for changes to occur. But again, the likelihood of the person is who they are and they're never going to change, or they're never going to agree with you, is also there. And this is why I guess this advice is absolutely necessary for that woman. So there is a process for divorce, okay? It's not just bam, I'm ending it. I would advise you to take those necessary processes. And in the United Kingdom, there are obviously laws, like every part of the world. Of course, there are certain procedures and a certain process to dissolving your marriage completely. I hope this video helps anyone who's out there. So let's get into it. The divorce process in the United Kingdom is based on, of course, if your marriage is a legally recognized marriage in the UK. So let me start by saying this. There's an eligibility criteria to apply to the courts, the family courts in the UK for divorce. And you can do that online or by post. Online is obviously what we all do now. To which gov.uk here in the United Kingdom is where you can do and start your divorce proceedings. You can also get a lawyer completely to do everything for you, okay? But a lot of us who want to save a bit of buck do it ourselves. And I think it's actually advisable you do it yourself, just so you understand the processes into which you are obviously embarking on. So what is the eligibility here in the United Kingdom? There are 3 eligibilities, okay? So the first is to be married for at least 1 year before you can apply for that divorce. Your marriage has got to be legally recognized in the United Kingdom. So for some of us, we have traditional marriages. I actually have a traditional marriage as well. And not all traditional marriages have been given or awarded a marriage certificate in the United Kingdom. You would have had to apply for that. And likelihood your local council would have to authorize or orchestrate that marriage ceremony in order to give you that certificate for you to have a legal marriage certificate, right? But some marriages are not legally authorized in the UK if you haven't gone through that procedure. And then also the marriage has to be irretrievable, okay? Irretrievably broken down. So those are the 3 main eligibility criteria to applying for a divorce in the UK. So those are 3 grounds to which you can apply or make your first application to the courts. Before that, there was actually 5 grounds. And if you are a legal representative, potentially, or particularly in dealing with marital or divorce cases, you would know that there was 5 grounds of divorce, or one of them was good enough for you to apply to the courts for divorce. Apart from the ones that I have just stated, the 5 were adultery, unreasonable behavior, 2 years of consent, okay, 2 years separation consent, or 5 years not separation with non-consent, and also desertion. Now, please look all of that up. I'm not going to get into it into this video today because you don't require that now in the United Kingdom to apply for a court. This was before the 6th of April of 2022. And I'm specifically saying that date because I applied for my divorce, or at least started the proceedings in May or June 2022. So I just made it, okay, to making the process a lot more seamless and streamlined. So once you understand and know your eligibility and you've passed that, or at least you know that, okay, that works for me, then you apply. And you can do that online or post. These days, obviously, we do everything online. It can be a joint application or a sole application. Joint, whereas both of you have said, yeah, this is it, we're done, and you make a joint application to the courts, or you can do it on your own. Before the 6th of April 2022, and before I get into it, let me just explain it because I hope I haven't confused you. Let me just explain where the change of divorce procedures took place in the United Kingdom. On the 6th of April 2022, in England and Wales, when the Divorce, Dissolution and Separation Act of 2020 came into force. Before that, you would have needed those 5 eligibility criteria, or at least one of those 5 eligibility criteria, alongside the other very mandatory, such as being married for a year, etc. That is what you required, and both applicants or both parties, not necessarily applicants, because you may be the sole person applying for the divorce petitions, but both parties will have had to agree that they are deciding on going through with the divorce. Therefore, you would have had to have gotten both signatures, okay? You are petitioning for the other person to agree, and they will have to sign. If they do not sign, then it's a long waiting game. It costs currently in the United Kingdom £612 to apply to the courts for a legal divorce. If you're low incomes, you can get support with that. Once you made that first application, either jointly or solely, but let's say this is a sole application because for the most part, it usually is. It's usually one person saying, I'm done, okay? If you make a sole application before the 6th of April 2022, the other party has time or can sit on it for 5 years. 5 years. Correct me if I'm wrong to all the legal representatives out there. And just a disclaimer, I am not giving legal advice here. I'm just sharing my experience. So after you made the application, paid the fee, you will get a response from the court saying you now have a 20-week reflection period. That is 5 months. And a lot can happen with 5 months. You just never know. Maybe you might just reconcile and put your differences aside, and you might even do a renewal of vows, who knows? But it's likely not always the case, because within that 20-week period, then you start to make loads of arrangements. Perhaps you start separating, moving to different places. You're now, organizing financial work, legal paperwork to support your divorce case, arranging children, co-parenting plans, child maintenance. All types of things can happen within the 20-week period, including, of course, even mediation and counseling. Even if you're like, we are never going back, sometimes counseling can just support you. It's a 20-week period, okay? That is a mandatory period that is required for all types of things to take place. After that 20-week reflection period, you will receive another response or an email or letter from the court saying that your 20-week period is up. You can now apply for a conditional order. Before the 6th of April 2022, this would have been called the Decree Nisi. Okay, it's now not known. That's not the term that we go for now since 2022, April 2022. It's now called a conditional order. And that actually confirms that the courts see no legal reason to reject your petition for divorce. And you know, as I said, before that period, your spouse could have come with a counter argument, as in, she actually can't divorce because of such, such, and such. And the courts will look at it within that 20-week and says, unfortunately, we can't give you the reason. And can you imagine how stressful that is? You just want to move on with your life. And the courts have the authorization of stating whether that's something you can proceed with or not. In my case, of course, the court granted it. And that was granted, and I feel that mine would have been like the first of 100 divorce applications since that, act came into effect in April of 2022. So immediately after the 20-week period, the courts awarded me my conditional order. So after the conditional order has been granted, there's another mandatory 6 weeks and 1 day waiting period. And again, I think this finalizes any kind of petitions or counter arguments, whatever the case. And after that 6 weeks and 1 day waiting period, you then apply again to the courts for the final order. The final order was once before the 6th of April 22 considered or called the decree absolute. And this is what grants you the official legal grounds that your marriage is completely dissolved. This process can take a minimum of 7 months. So you can be divorced within less than a year. It depends on the situation, because what is separate to divorce proceeding is some other things, which is obviously property and savings and finances, debts, pension, spousal support, child maintenance, child arrangements. That is a completely different legal process than your actual divorce petition. Please bear that in mind. Now, what you can do is obviously combine it within the proceedings. That takes it way longer than 7 months, as you can imagine. In my case, it took just under a year. If you have finances that you need to organize, then you would need to apply for a completely different order, which is like the financial consent order, I believe. I didn't need to do that because he didn't have any money. And neither did I, thankfully. Our main asset was the property. And that was something that we were able to sort out of the courts, luckily. Okay. We had to go back and forth. That's a story for another day. So I hope this gives you a bit more clarity on the divorce proceedings as it pertains to the United Kingdom laws. So now that I've explained the legal process, I just want to give you my brief story. I shared with you in one of the parts in the series that my ex-husband and I had a disagreement one evening, and I just blurted out, I'm giving you 1 year. And honestly, when I was stating that, I didn't even have in mind that I was going to divorce him, okay? However, what he responded with was, if you like, divorce me tomorrow. Just very pompous and proud and obviously egotistical, right? And when he said that, I was like, wow, okay. It's not like he even gave me ideas, because I still walked away like, whatever. However, I then started to actually actively seek advice, speaking to my elders, speaking to my pastor, spoke to my mother, spoke to my therapist at the time, and they were always like, what are you waiting for 1 year for? Honey, you are sleeping with the enemy. If I were you and the danger space that you're in, I would start speaking to a lawyer now. And in fact, it was actually my pastor at the time who actually recommended a family lawyer within our local area to start the proceedings. And so in May of 2022, I did. We was living in a very toxic environment. And I was very, very worried for myself. This was after the knife incident in the kitchen, which I spoke about it in a previous video. And I reached out to this law firm and I said, please, I've done everything possible to ask my spouse to leave the marital home, and he's not listening. And it was like, well, your options are for you to leave the home, absolutely, or you're going to have to find some way to convince him, because legally he's allowed to stay there. It's his house. And so, unfortunately, I had to go through that dread of daily asking him to leave. I didn't leave. I've explained why. It was a very silly move. Women out there who are in a dangerous position, if you end up in a homeless shelter, go and sleep in that homeless shelter. Yeah. Let it all behind. If it means saving your life. I got so lucky. God was with me, because I didn't leave, and it's not because of stubbornness. It's truly because that was where I worked. You guys, I worked from my home. I did content at home. If I had just let that go with everything that I had to do, you know, how would I have continued making content, for example? That's what I did from home. And so I didn't want to leave based on that. And apart from that, everything that was within the house, I bought. It was literally mine with him just plonked in it, just enjoying the fruits of my labor. So I was like, the right person to leave is you. And he just wouldn't go. And it got obviously very hasty and very dangerous in the end, which is unfortunate, but that was the situation. I hoped that a lawyer or some type of letter from the courts was supporting that, but it didn't. And so what helped me to get him away and out of the house was obviously an actual specific incident. I shared it in the previous video, of domestic abuse, which was recorded. The ring doorbell, and obviously a person who was an eyewitness to the domestic incident, that granted me a restraining order, or in this country we call it a non-molestation order. And that was, you know, able to get him separated or get us separated and him out of the house until our divorce was finalized. I had to wait until, you know, the 20-week cooling off period. We had a mediator. The mediator got involved after that incident specifically. He actually was refusing to even have a mediator involved. I can't remember what it was that convinced him that it was required. And within that time as well, it was all on me paying the mortgage. I mean, I wasn't ready anyway. Paying all the mortgage, paying all the bills, looking after our son. It was fully on me. I just followed the procedure. I think maybe around October, I got the conditional order, for example, then I applied, and then there was another 6 weeks. And then February of 2023 is when I received, which was 1 year after he said that, remember, that's when I received the official court order, which was the final order of dissolution. So I've obviously shared that very brief, but the series that I have shared will give you a bit more of elaboration of that entire procedure and the nightmare of what that was. And I guess more of the aftermath occurred after the actual official, you know, court order of divorce, surprisingly, in other areas. If I do get the courage to share, I will start sharing that with you. But again, I'm not advising people to divorce and just run to the divorce courts. I'm advising, however, for you to be very mindful of the dangers that you put yourself in when you remain in a toxic environment that can hurt you. The solution is divorce. The solution is at least separation, even if you want to start with that. Because with me, that's what I wanted to start with. Separation. We had separated before, we got back together, and I wanted to start at least with another separation before I'm like, yes, I want this final thing. I paid for the full fee on my own, obviously. There's no contribution for his end. Also, legal representation, very important. I didn't have a legal representative throughout my entire divorce proceedings. I only got an initial consultation from a family law firm who gave me all of the advice. And if you have a good lawyer, they will say to you, wow, looking at the landscape of things, honestly, you can do this yourself and you can represent yourself and just work with the courts directly. As I stated, we have no assets and all of that together, apart from the property that we own together. That was it. But despite that, there was not much fiffing and faffing. It was a matter of us in mediation, resolving a lot of those things, such as child maintenance and arrangements, etc. And thank heavens as well, you know what saved me? The fact that I lost weight and I lost a lot of business opportunities. And I actually didn't have much savings left because I was using my savings that I had saved up until that point to maintain our lives, okay? Pay my bills, pay my mortgage, all of what I had saved, because money was running low for me because I had weight loss. And if you guys know, my career was very much pertaining to me being a bigger woman. Also, I started drawing back my children. You stop seeing, my lifestyle. And so a lot of brands pulled back in working with me as well. It was a hell of a period, you guys. It was very difficult. But financially, he couldn't apply for any spousal maintenance because guess what? I wasn't really making bread like that at that point. And I'm so thankful that I wasn't, because can you imagine how he would have continued milking from me had I been in my bag like that? Oh, God took me out of many situations, in particularly that one. So there you go, you guys. I hope that this video is somewhat informative and is interesting or supportive to you. To anybody who is from any other part of the world, please, actually, I would love to hear the divorce proceeding or, application in your part of the world. Leave it in the description box below. It will be useful to know, the grounds for divorce in USA, in Brazil, I don't know, in Kenya, in Ghana. I know, obviously, the Ghana procedure as well. And just to touch upon that, I did share as well, traditional marriage may not necessarily be legally seen in the United Kingdom. However, I had a traditional marriage, and what that implies where it pertains to divorce is obviously there is a dowry that needs to be paid traditionally, and it includes money, alcohol. So you take schnapps, you take entoma, which is material, and you give to the elders, so the woman's family. In divorce, the woman's family returns that back to the man or the man's family, okay? That's how it authorizes the divorce in traditional senses, but we're not talking about that today. We're talking about legal marriage. Perhaps, depending on how well this video does, I could do one for traditional. As a queen mother specifically as well, I've actually had to educate myself on that. My chief, who's my uncle, actually did give me a lot of advice when it comes to that for my own marriage, and also just it may be something that I will have to do as an elder in my family as well, if I have to advise someone in my family of divorce proceedings the traditional way. So I have spoken a lot today, a lot of information. It's a lot. Please just break it down, take a deep breath, have a cup of tea, soak yourself in a bath, babes. It's a lot, and you're going to get through this, okay? I got through. I'm out on the other side, you guys, so you can be as well. Thank you so much. I love you. Ashe.